I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his pride. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, this is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we are going to be talking about John Legend and how absolutely trash he is. He went on Club Shay Shay, and I just saw this clip popping around, like literally just logged onto Twitter and just had to squeeze it into my show because some time ago they lost their son. They had an emotional Instagram picture for which they posed holding their child. And it was 20 weeks or after 20 weeks, so technically stillbirth. Or I don't know if the baby was alive after it had come out, but they tried to preserve their life, tried to save the baby's life. And about a year after that, John Legend convinced his wife, Chrissy Teigen, that they actually had an abortion. So now they're going around trying to push their loss of their child because they've convinced themselves that they had an abortion, perhaps to be trendy, I don't know. And now they're using it to try to justify more dead children in the world. And I've got a big problem with that. So we're going to be talking about that today. I also wanted to talk about Ben Shapiro on Jubilee. I just finished his whole video, and it was him versus, I don't know, it was either 20 or 25 Harris supporters. And so he would say a prompt, and then people would have to debate the prompt. And I would say they really weren't able to get him on anything, really. I mean, I'm not going to say that people had terrible arguments. I think people had or argued terribly, rather. I think there are arguments that just really didn't connect or make a lot of sense that from people who are actually good at debate, but that doesn't mean that their arguments were solid. But there was a segment on abortion, and I want to touch on it, but I really just want to show you guys at least this part where there was this trans woman that came on and just unloaded on Ben. And she didn't attempt really the prompt really to disprove, because it wasn't even just about abortion. It was that Kamala Harris's particular position on it is indefensible, which nobody really defended. Some of them actually just outright agreed that no restrictions they didn't agree with that and tried to deny that was even the mainstream Democrat Party's position. Also would like to touch on some other things, like Kamala Harris she did town hall last night. She had silly moments for sure, always will, always does. It came out, by the way, that Colorado, where they had the criminal gangs, and they said they were taking over apartment buildings, and people were trying to deny that there was a problem. Apparently, they knew since last June that I think it was last June. Let me go. At least since last year, it's been about an entire year. That gang was setting up in that area. So it's pretty amazing that they denied it for all this time. But I don't know how much we'll get into that today. I just wanted to mention it. I did retweet if you guys want to go to True Black Tea. That's my handle on Twitter to read some of those documents. But that's an interesting thing that came out today for sure. just want to let you guys know what's going on in the world. Before you jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost to stream, run my site, all that good stuff. So I appreciate anybody that can help. Some people have reached out, given a little bit on the website and said, I wish I could do more, but you know, this Biden economy. And I totally understand that for sure. While it's funny that they keep acknowledging there's a problem, but at the same time, they're trying to say it's the best economy ever. Some of these headlines is just silly. If people feel that they're not doing well, you just need to trust people who say that they're having a hard time putting food on their table. So I don't think arguing with the electorate is a profitable strategy, but we'll see how that works out, Cotton. And but anyway, I thank you guys for all that you can do, all that you have done, for sharing my stuff. Please continue to share that 50 reasons video. Thank you for sharing it around. I appreciate that. Sharing other content, signing up for emails, commenting when you're watching live, commenting when you watch it back later, liking it, liking the page, following the page. It all really does help. So thank you for doing whatever you can do to support Black Tea News, including showing up so often. I do not take your viewership for granted. I do also encourage you guys to check out different stuff on the website, like this cool, Black tea mug we got. I'm actually wearing some merch today. It's this XX Club lifetime membership, and I think I have a picture of it kind of with some other stuff. Yeah. So I got that and hoodie too and other stuff. So if you guys I'm wearing that due to the topic. So you guys can check out other merch that we have available as well on the website. So, I made this vote for Trump 2024, make crack whack again shirt, and I didn't even make it for Hunter Biden. I made it because of some Biden Harris policy about giving out like I don't know, they're like drug kits to people to kind of, I don't even know if it's to wean them off, but to just, they were giving out needles or whatever to folks. But Kamala Harris, she did an ACLU questionnaire, and a lot of people have talked about the questionnaire because it said that she wanted to give transgender care to illegal detainees who are here with taxpayer dollars. And so that was a big crazy thing that came out of the ACLU survey. But there was other stuff that was really crazy in there, including the decriminalizing all drugs, like hard drugs, like fentanyl, heroin, all that stuff. So I guess if you're an uber libertarian or something, maybe that may sound good to you, but I think normal people's, I don't want to say that's not normal. Maybe you have a good kind of reason why you might. I think most people, their intuition is to not have such hard drugs that could harm and alter the judgment of people to also be a harm to others. I also don't buy it's kind of it's a victimless crime if people choose to do drugs. I just don't think you've known enough drug addicts if you think that. I'm very anti-drug myself, but she wanted to decriminalize all that. So I'm like, every time I look at the shirt, there's a new reason to wear it. But anyway, other announcements on November the 3rd, I'll be in K Book Fest in Ann Arbor. Have my books there. If you want a copy, you can get it signed. And that weekend, the 8th, 9th, and 10th, I'll be at Motor City Comic Con. That will be in Novi. I will be in Artist Alley. I don't know the number at the top of my head, which booth it is, but I will be there, and I'll make sure that I send that on an email, or at least put it online or something, so you guys can know. It is quickly approaching. Hopefully the weekend is fun because I'm happy because Harris lost the election, but things are tight. Trump isn't running away with it. I think the behavior from the Harris campaign really illustrates that they think that there's a problem. But the problem could just be that it's just really close, but that doesn't mean that it won't break for her. So however you feel about the person you want to vote for, make sure that you go out and do that. And, if you want to go convince other people to vote for that person, I encourage you to go and make the outcome that you want happen. Yeah, I don't know. It's a close, but they are flipping out. They're flipping out so much that they've altered their message from joy and opportunity economy and stuff. And they're still talking about that stuff. But I mean, Kamala Harris went out in front of the White House to deliver a speech about how Donald Trump is, pro-Nazi. And it's just really silly. And then Ben Shapiro posts pictures of, him and Trump and celebrating stuff with Jewish culture, and people, and Michael Knowles posted a picture of Israel with like some place that they named after Trump, and it just doesn't make sense to just push this idea that he's some kind of Hitler type figure, especially when the Democrats have turned a blind eye to so much stuff. You have Hamas saying, "Hey, we want to. If you do a ceasefire, cool. We're going to kill all the Jews as soon as we get the chance." And then Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are like, "That sounds, we can work with that, I guess." We're just trying to ignore the ultimate outcomes of what the enemies are saying that they want to do, and then saying all these protesters that are pretty radical, that they have a point, and really pacifying them because they want to appeal to a particular demographic. So they've had the severe problem of anti-Semitism. It's one of the reasons, if we're being honest, why Josh Shapiro was not her running mate. That's not the only reason. Tim Walz being like the cheerleader and pitching himself as the cheerleader rather than someone who needs a spotlight, because it was, I guess the thinking was also Josh Shapiro, he has a future of like higher political aspirations, or could easily have a future of that, and Tim Walz doesn't, and so his role will really be to be her number two, and so that was attractive to her. So she went with that, but there was all kinds of chatter around the Democrat Party, not things that Republicans were bringing up, that they were bringing up themselves, about how it would be bad to have this Jewish man on the ticket. So and then if Republicans mentioned it and said it out loud, they acted like it was a conspiracy. But they have a real issue. They have a real problem. So turning it back on this Trump's bad, Trump is like Hitler, because of what General Kelly said. I'm like, why didn't he say this earlier? Why didn't he say this during the last October surprise period? Why didn't he say it right after he left the White House? Why didn't he leave the White House and say that immediately, tell the New York Times? So other Trump people are like, that doesn't sound true at all in the least bit. But normal Americans have already experienced Trump, and he could have gone authoritarian with COVID. He didn't really, not like he could have gone, I don't think he did everything right for sure, but Biden and Kamala, the things that they pushed and did afterwards, the sort of policies that they push. We talked yesterday about how they wanted to make, she said, no religious exemptions for abortions. What? I'm not concerned about the rumors that you make up about Donald Trump when I've experienced the 4 years of Donald Trump. I'm concerned with the things that Kamala Harris has voted on, has said that she stomps for, things that have come out of her mouth that she intends to do, including all the lies that she's willing to tell to push abortion, and to get her legislative agenda done. And for that, they're willing to get rid of the filibuster. For that, they're willing to do court reform and pack the courts. When the Supreme Court does a ruling they don't like, they're willing to just defy it. I'm not concerned about Trump. I'm especially not concerned about Donald Trump, because all the levers of power seem to be against him as a check. You can't say he gets away with everything when he's been indicted so many times, and the time they finally got him was for a felony that didn't even make sense. Like, someone said, how many felonies was he convicted for on my page earlier today? And I said, one, that he was convicted for 34 times. And then the way he started explaining, I'm like, you don't even understand the case. So he said that Trump got convicted for using taxpayer funds to pay a porn star. I'm like, that is not what happened. you don't even understand the thing that you are allegedly upset about. So, I mean, they really went after him because they think that he ought to have used campaign finances to pay for a porn star, and that's not even how it's supposed to work. So I'm sure that will get overturned. But my point is that they have used some lawfare against him, the Democrats in general, and the media. They propped up Biden. They tried to act like you were all crazy for noticing that he wasn't well. You know, I've said this stuff all before. I'm sure I'll keep saying it again. But overall, there's reason to be more concerned about her than there is about him, on top of all the evil stuff that she stands for. So their new pitch of Trump being like Hitler, wants to be like Hitler, it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, let's go on and talk about the Jubilee thing first, and then we'll get back to the John Legend stuff. Okay, so Ben Shapiro was on Jubilee. Jubilee is a pretty big channel. They foster different discussions and stuff. And so they had Charlie Kirk on there, and it was Charlie Kirk versus 20, 30 college students or whatever. And they'd run to they'd say a prompt. He'd say like, "Oh, I believe Kamala is a DEI hire." That's what like Charlie Kirk said. And there's a countdown, and people run for the chair to be able to debate the issue. And so I think, I don't know if I watched the whole Charlie Kirk one, but Charlie Kirk had one, and then they had one of the students who was against Charlie Kirk, Dean, to debate different Trump supporters. I've only seen clips of that. I didn't really watch that one. But side note, Dean used to be like an Andrew Tate wannabe, and it was like scamming people out of like doing these like courses that he offered. So there's a lot of people on TikTok who are like professional TikTok debaters, will get on live. They have these big followings. People send them gifts and so on. And I just know there's been a lot of times on these sites where people say things to get clicks and attention. And I don't know what they really believe at their core. Because sometimes I'm like, some of the arguments that sometimes people make, particularly like some of their religious arguments, I'm like, you seem like a smarter person than that to come to the conclusion that you have about that particular topic. So how do we get here? So I wonder how much is for show and for cash. And I don't want to, I like to not poison the well a bit, but at this, because that is a fallacy. But so you can examine their arguments and just go after their arguments and stuff. But my issue, I guess, if I, for example, if they wanted me to debate some of these kids, I wouldn't want to. We could talk about the different arguments and concepts and stuff, but I just don't want to waste my time with people who don't actually believe what they believe. And I know people debate, and they have to debate different positions that they may not necessarily believe, so they can debate and know how to counter different arguments. But that's not really what I'm talking about. I don't want to waste my time unnecessarily when I have a conversation about abortion or something online with people on TikTok. I want to change someone's mind about what it actually is. And if someone is just trying to dunk on you and win and get, gifts sent to them, I don't know where to go from there. And or when people go super, like one time I had a conversation and someone went, was trying, I said life starts at conception, and then they want to argue about like, no, but you were sperm. What about when you were sperm and an egg? I'm like, I know you're smart enough to know that I wasn't a sperm and an egg. That my individual life began when I was conceived, when that sperm met the egg. I know you're smart enough to know that. So trying to say that's some kind of arbitrary line and we should go back to sperm and egg, it's not the same thing. It's not the same, though I can still value my eggs and someone else's sperm because that's how you were eventually going to achieve life, but it's not the same as a new life actually being created. So some of these people, I just don't have I don't say a lot of patience for. Don't have a lot of, I don't know, emotional bandwidth to deal with some if I think your argument is probably not rooted in a sincere place. And I just don't know with some of these folks. And I just mentioned Dean because I know he had like a get rich scheme, and TikTok and amassing the following of these people is a good way to get attention and fame and so on. He may actually believe all these things that he says, but I don't know. Maybe. And I don't know how you assess that, because people make certain claims like, oh, you don't actually believe that. You're just saying stuff because you're a black Republican. And as a black Republican, you're just trying to get attention or whatnot. And I don't know, which doesn't make a lot of sense, because I say things that would upset the Republican base, like if I criticize Trump too much. So if people actually looked at my content, I don't think that they would come to that conclusion. But people can throw around accusations all the time. So I'm just I don't know. I'm iffy about it. I'm iffy about it. But and I thought his argument in this particular Jubilee conversation was dumb too, but a real big reach. But anyway, Ben went on this show and he had different prompts, and the particular prompt I want to address with you guys is the one on abortion. Now, Ben made a very specific claim about abortion. He said that Kamala Harris's view on it is indefensible. And some of these people, none of them really defended her position, because he said, I believe her position is no restrictions. And the first guy who came up was basically said that he didn't believe, I think, past viability. And he asked Ben, like, do you really think that that's a mainstream, like the Democrats are for normal limitations? And Ben's like, yes. Like, as far, in his lifetime, really. I don't know if it's accurate to say his whole lifetime, but he's what, been is he been 40? I mean, they were more, for exceptions or whatever, and restrictions, or rare, safe, legal, rare used to be the jargon. But we know that Democrats, they wouldn't, in the Congress in 2023, they voted against mandating care for children that survive abortion. But he did mention, for it was a specific example, if there was a 15 limit on the table, the Democrats certainly wouldn't vote for that. They wouldn't vote for that. And most of the time when you confront these Democrats in Congress and Senate and stuff, and say, and like, for example, I asked Alyssa Slotkin, like, no, I'm sorry, not Alyssa Slotkin, it was Haley Stevens. She's from Michigan. Does she believe that the baby at any point in time should get any sort of moral consideration? And she just wouldn't answer my question. She tried to divert from saying, like, oh, where are you from? And I was like, and I'm like, oh, I'm from Pontiac. And by the way, you didn't answer my question. And she just wouldn't answer the question. And it wasn't exactly phrased like that, but that was the gist of it. But she wouldn't answer because she didn't want to let it be known that she doesn't have any restrictions. Beto O'Rourke, Stacey Abrams, Gavin Newsom, you can find stuff on camera with folks saying all kinds of crazy, being pushed to admit pretty radical things. But, Kamala Harris, she doesn't support any restrictions. And again, she not only does she not support any restrictions, she also doesn't believe in exemptions for Christians. So that's pretty radical. And he probably, they filmed that probably before Kamala Harris said that, so that wasn't brought up. So I think most of these people who are on this panel probably think that's a pretty radical position. One person was just like, it's a woman's choice, and it was just bizarre. If you watch that segment, it's a black guy on there. He was very bizarre. There is a clip from that segment that's gone viral, and that's this woman, this thick black woman who sat down and actually complimented Ben, said he looked better in person. And then so they start arguing about the definition of what abortion was, and Ben was like, it's a termination of a life. And so she wanted to just say it's just termination of a pregnancy. So he seemed very confused with that definition. She's like, where'd you getting that from? And he's like, that is the definition. She's like, no, you can get it from this and this place. It's just the termination of the pregnancy. And so that is the jargon going around right now, that just the ending of a pregnancy, every ending of the pregnancy is, I guess technically maybe a surgical ending of a pregnancy, they would say, is a abortion, even if your child comes out alive. It's madness, but that's the route that they're going. And he didn't seem familiar with it, but I've been on TikTok enough to know that people are saying that, and they run different people go live and they'll say pro-choice all 9 months with this, which this woman was. Let me just share my screen real quick because she's on screen so you guys know what I'm talking about. So she was pro-choice all 9 months because she said that she believes that a C-section is an abortion. And so Ben, just after he was like confused by her stance for a little bit, he was just like, okay, well, he said, obviously, we wouldn't be having this kind of moral disagreement if you just believed being born was an abortion and that's what we are talking about. So he's like, so let's just remove that from it. Let's just say, okay, the termination of a life. So he just cut right through it. So on TikTok, when people talk to folks and they say, oh, abortion all 9 months, they're like, do you mean lethal abortion? I know it's stupid. I know it's stupid. The definition that I have in my book, of course, God is blatantly against abortion. It's from Merriam Medical Webster Dictionary, but there's different sources and stuff online that have changed things so they can, alter their language and get away with trying to conflate so many things to be abortion. And they might just say termination of a pregnancy because they don't want to mention that it's a life was killed. So as soon as he mentioned, okay, well, let's just say, how do you feel about the termination of the life? And so she's like, well, I value sentience. Okay, so if you value sentience, and let's say you're going to put a limitation, which they didn't get that deep into it afterwards because they get to vote each other off. If you value sentience, that's still not Kamala Harris's position. And if you don't think that there should be abortions after sentience has begun, which I don't think that position makes any sense, but let's go with that. You have a more moderate position than Kamala Harris, and Ben said that her position is indefensible. So no one actually really tried to defend her position too much, and nobody was successful at it. But I want to play for you guys this scene where there was a young woman who doesn't really look like a woman because she's altered her body. But when you're in the XX club, it's a lifetime membership. She came in hot, and Ben just ended up letting her talk through the whole thing. So I'm going to go ahead and play for you guys this video. Hopefully it doesn't stop the stream, because sometimes when you're playing something, it stops the stream on YouTube. But I think it'll be fine. Once I stop playing it, the stream will come back together. So if that does happen, just, I guess wait a couple minutes to come back. Okay, well, here we go.
Hey, Ben.
Like a bro, my friend. All right.
How's it going?
Let's break open
So, first question, can men get pregnant?
Men cannot get pregnant.
Okay, awesome. So,
definitionally.
Definitionally, okay. Do men experience SA? Sexual assault?
Sure.
Got it. What about the existence of trans men?
What about the existence? Do you mean women who believe that they are men? What are we talking about here? Women experiencing gender dysphoria?
So my other question is, do you benefit from white supremacy in any way, shape, or form?
I'm going to need more specifics on what you mean by white supremacy.
Here, let me give it to you, Ben.
Sure, please.
I just want to remind you before we go forward that the prompt was Kamala Harris's position on abortion is indefensible. And now he's asking questions about white supremacy, which, by the way, Black babies are disproportionately killed in the womb. So if you are a white supremacist, abortion's a pretty good deal for you. Abso-freaking-lutely. So the point of her getting up here is not even to discuss things. It's literally to berate Ben, and you'll see that.
So I'm a transgender man.
Okay.
I've experienced SA,
Okay.
and abortion rights affect me directly. So
Because you're a woman.
if we're talking about the American dream that you live,
So
why don't I have access to that? Because there's no legislation, what, in the history of America that legislates a man's body. So why does mine have to be legislated?
Okay, this isn't true. I thought Ben might mention it, but this person just kept like going and kind of going and going and going. But the easiest answer is that every single law that basically tells you to do something or not doing something is something that is regulating your body. The person who violated her violated the law, but they're not allowed to do what they did. But we don't think that they should be able to do that. So there are laws against sexual assault. So that is a regulation on someone's body. You can't use your body to commit harm against someone else. I can't use my body to take my hands and just choke you to death. There are rules against that. So that is a regulation on my body against your body. And I know they mean like maybe internal stuff going on, but you are still active. It's not like someone's regulating your period. We're talking about someone deliberately ending the life of someone else. So there are laws against that. So saying that laws against deliberately killing someone else should be equal across the board, that's not a special rule against women. It's not. Nobody's picking on women. Men cannot deliberately end the lives of their children because they don't want them, because they can't afford them, because they have drama with the baby mama. Fathers can't do that. Mothers can't even do that outside of the womb. It's just blanket equal rights to say you cannot harm another human being. But another thing that is actually very specific to men is the draft. This woman is a woman and has never had to sign up for the draft. Now, she might sign up for the military voluntarily, and a lot of women do, but the men are the only ones who have to register. And a selective service had this tweet, and I've shown it to you guys before, that was pretty funny. Funny, like, I can't believe they tweeted this, but they set it up like, even if you are the only child, your son's only heir, you still have to register for the draft. Like, FYI, you gotta die for USA. Even if there's no one else to carry on the family name, the family line, the genetics, etc. You gotta go die in the war. Like, so when people say there's no law that regulates a man's body, they're saying a man has to take his whole body, go into the training, and then be armed and go fight in a war and die. Maybe. Hopefully not. Hopefully you win and people come back. Everybody comes back alive, but that doesn't tend to be the case when you fight some kind of world war or something along those lines. So we have had drafts in the past. Granted, we haven't had one anytime soon, but we exist on a voluntary basis. That's great. We may not always do and they may have another draft. It's still on the books and they still make men do it, and it's illegal if you have not done it. So if you're a dude and you haven't done it and you are 18 years or older, you better go and make sure that is taken care of. So this premise that people keep repeating, including Kamala Harris, she ought to know better, that women, there's this really specific thing that only women, is regulated against women, and men don't have anything like it. It's not true. In a law saying that you cannot deliberately unalive your own child that is likely in your body because you had consensual sex is very minuscule compared to the fact that men have to be sent to go and fight and die. And again, it hasn't happened in a long time, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. We've had very few drafts in our history, but we have had them. In one of my books, Song on the Devil's Lips, which is a historical fiction fantasy, I write about a big point of, like, the high point, the climax of the story is a scene when they're having the draft riots, because people rioted after they instituted the draft for the Civil War. So it's just not a true talking point, and no one is treating you different because they're saying you can't deliberately kill your child. So that's not a special ability that you can just will to happen. It's something that you want co-conspirators to help you do. It's some you want the tools and resources and immunity to be able to carry it out. So it is really a special right to murder your child. And I just don't think that you're that special or worthy to have that sort of blanket privilege. So I haven't seen a lot of reasons to and explanations to why women should have that blanket privilege, and she certainly does not provide that.
I've got a vagina.
I'm not interested in what your genitalia are.
Clearly you are. I mean, it's all over everything you make,
no,
buddy. I'm sorry. I hate to say it to you, but
I think you can read on my
kind of an
face that I
obsession
radically
you
am
guys
not.
have.
I think you can read on my face that I radically am not. When we're talking about
No,
abortion,
I don't. I mean, you can present it here, but in most of the content that you have, you attack my community constantly. And you don't even realize guys like me exist who actually share a lot of similarities to you and everything, because I'm a married man of 20 years. Got
I
a wife.
recognize that you exist. I disagree with your claim
So
that you
if
are a
I
male.
was sexually assaulted, right, and I didn't have access to that abortion care, do you believe that I should have carried that child to term because
What does
I
this
was
have to-
sexually assaulted?
I mean,
No, I just want to make sure that that's what you believe. Because as a transgender man, I have seen your side of the entire political debate, never ever having the conversation of what an American freedom is. Because why am I not allowed to live my American freedom as a man? You know, I mean, you get your choice as a man to live and free and all that.
You're really moving around terminology very wildly here.
And so are you, because that's the tactics you play in your game. And you've done it the entire time. You've jumped from one subject to the next. You speak so fast, and I know how you work. So how does it feel to have it in your face?
Oh, well, I mean,
because I'm sick and tired of the shit that you have put against my community.
Look at these clowns. Like, yes, slay queen. That's what's happening. Slay queen, as she tells him off. By the way, this is so, I don't want to be like terribly sexist against women, but this energy, this vibe, this emotional, it just, not that men don't go into emotional fits of rage. But I don't know, I'm not very convinced this person is a man, especially with your slay queen in the backgrounds, cheering you as you go off about your vagina, you know? So, they're so far off from the prompt. She's not even attempting to argue the prompt. So you basically, when you go into these sorts of rants, when you go into personal attacks like this, you can take it as I surrender. I have got nothing constructive or intelligent to say about the actual argument. Now, she went into, what if I'm, sexually assaulted and impregnated and you think I should carry that baby, etc. You don't need to stand on, the sexual assault victims in these conversations when you actually believe that people should be able to have an abortion at 8 months just because, oh, I didn't know I was pregnant and I'm going to go have an abortion. If you think that a woman should be able to have an abortion like that, or, oh, I had a one night stand and I had a oopsie baby and I don't want the baby. If you believe a woman should have be able to have an abortion because of that, if you support no restrictions, you do not have to stand on the, what if a woman was sexually assaulted? Because most people actually do grant that exception. I believe that's actually discrimination. If it's wrong to kill babies, it's wrong to kill babies. And it's not going to undo what happens and doesn't undo the trauma. And I don't believe that we should grant more moral rights and consideration to the actual rapist than the child. And if both can live, my ethic is that both should live. I know a lot of people disagree with it, but we can have a discussion. And I don't mind having a discussion about that topic, though I don't believe that most people are mature enough, I guess, to even really have this conversation. But I do think it's dishonest if the prompt is Kamala Harris, who supports no restrictions, her position is indefensible, and you come up hot with this emotional jargon about if you were pregnant, you'd be forced to carry the child, which also is not technically true. I mean, once you are pregnant, it's a biological process. the child will come out one way or another. The pro-life position is you cannot deliberately go in and kill that child and, you know, allow the natural birth to happen. If you have an abortion, that is actually forced birth to a dead baby. So I think her behavior is disgusting, but I also think the behavior in the background of the people cheering it on, knowing that she's crossed a threshold into personal attacks that is just filibustering time, taking time away from other people who, by the way, never got the chance to come and debate Ben. There's people who he didn't even get a chance to speak to. And she just takes all this time to unload all her feelings because people don't accept her identity as a man. And Ben seemed to think that she was a man at first, came in with the backwards chair trying to present that sort of energy, I guess. And he even said, oh, that's some bro energy or whatever at first. And then she starts ranting about her vagina. There's a before I play the rest of this, I don't know why this is seems like it's so dark. I saw a TikTok video with a trans woman, and he said, you know, why is it so important, or why do you guys care so much about trans people? And a lot of people commented and said, we don't. But I haven't found the original video, and that's why I haven't replied to it. But my reply is, how do we know that you're trans? How do we know? We're just all living life. We're on the internet, and all of a sudden, like, how do we know that you're trans? Especially if you are convincing in and how you've pulled it off with your surgeries, with the hormones and everything, the hair that you grew out or got extensions for, and your makeup, whatever. Let's say your Adam apple isn't too big and your hands aren't too ginormous, and we can tell, we can't quite tell if you are a man or a woman. Let's say that's the case. Let's say you can pass. How do we know that you're trans? How do we know that you're really a man masquerading as a woman? Because you told us. Because you built a platform on being a man masquerading as a woman, or vice versa. So if you wanted to come and present and just have a discussion and be treated like a man, you could have just argued and had the discussion. But you wanted Ben Shapiro to know about your vagina. Okay? You wanted Ben Shapiro and everybody to have a discussion about your vagina. And no, men cannot get pregnant. You can get pregnant because you are a woman. If all that still functions and you didn't do too much damage to it in your pursuit of your costume. Because you're not a man. You're not a man. So again, no one's defending the prompt. No one is defending Kamala Harris's position on abortion. No, nobody, especially not her. So anyway, let's keep watching.
Especially Black trans women, because you constantly disregard all of our needs and then use us politically as a pawn when we're 1% of the population. Why not focus on the economy itself? All of us are struggling.
Dudes have mannerisms like that, except like gay dudes emulating women, like, you know, is.
Trans people. You want to focus on a Black woman when this is clearly a glass cliff situation. America's falling apart, and let's give it a woman right when it's all falling apart. When we had, 50 men run it and it looks like shit? Look at where we're at. Surely, so, where do you think that we're heading? I mean, it's so funny to watch white supremacy just fall apart the way that it is, and you ride so hard because guess what? In other countries around the world,
I just think it's
women
funny that
are not having children, and why is it? Because of the patriarchy and all the violence that men perpetuate, and all of this idea that abortion.
Why did you want to be a man? If you think, is it just because you wanted to benefit from the patriarchy and white supremacy? Why, if men are so terrible, she might as well have just said, I don't want to talk about Kamala Harris and abortion. I want to just talk about why women should choose the bear. She might as well have just done that. Why is she here talking about men are bad, patriarchy, etc., blah, blah, blah? That's why a woman should be in charge. You don't respect women enough to actually live out your life as the woman you are. So why is the patriarchy so bad? When you decided to let it dominate in your life as you perpetuate to the extent that you can to be a dude. It it's the math ain't math in here for me.
Abortion is somehow going to solve it all by forcing women to have abortion instead of focusing on the real problems that we're facing in our society. We're just going to completely ignore that. And we're just going to go, you know what? The line item is, let's make women have babies so that we can continue this capitalistic society that we have. Why are we doing that? What? I mean, why? Because you want to push white supremacy and because you want to make your check? It does great for you. Meanwhile, people like me have to live with the consequences of all of your rhetoric that you put on a daily basis. And including my entire community and the intersectionalities of Black women, men that experience SA, trans people, everyone that comes in. And I'm so sick of the idea that you can come in with this bravado that you're this big guy that knows things because you can talk fast, you have statistics. But really, what does it really matter at the end of the day if you are harming the entire American? This guy's been accused of rape. Trump.
She really just came in with
like court doc.
She just really came in with, you come in here with all your fast talking and your statistics. But what if you're hurting people's feelings? To the guy who literally coined, I don't know, we would say literally coined, but I think it might still be his pinned tweet or whatever, but facts don't care about your feelings, which, by the way, facts don't care about your feelings originated in a conversation about transgender ideology, about Caitlyn Jenner after he got that Woman of the Year award, and he was on Dr. Drew, and Zoe Tur put his hands on Ben and said, if you keep this up, I'm going to send you home in an ambulance. And that was when Ben said, would you like to discuss your genetics, sir? He put his big hands on him and threatened his life. And Ben was he was so cool and confused. And he's just like, that seems like you're overreacting for a discussion. It was something along those lines. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, Ben, you in trouble, bro. I'm like, what kind of filter is in his head? I'm like, I know he was like really picked on as a kid and stuff and really severely bullied. I'm like, is it because you cannot properly process danger? This dude wants to manhandle you. So, yeah. And then he said, facts don't care about your feelings. That's where it came from. So this whole Zoe Tur got so mad about that and stuff, but this person here saying, you come with your statistics. So many people, they want to be uplifted, but part of the victim culture at the same time. Again, as I said, like there's people online who make of their following and stuff by being trans influencers, and like, well, why can't you just treat me like a woman? Why can't you just treat me as a man? Because you literally told me that you weren't. You literally told me that you weren't. You're not trying to pass and live as that thing you want. You just want all these special kind of rights and accolades and stuff. And I don't buy into the reality that you're warping. I can't, and I refuse. And when you try to make me and say I'm a bad person because I'm not going to bow down to the whims of your feelings and emotions, it's going to really make me push back. It's going to really make me push back. And people say, oh, we're such a small population. Why are you picking on us? Okay, yeah, you're such a small population. So why is it that you guys want to take, I saw a report, it's like 900 medals were taken from women to give to trans people. And you could say, well, that's a small number, but that's still 900 times too many. Like, they're obsessed with this group, the left. And I said, I haven't said this in a while, so let me just go ahead and say this. I think one of the reasons, besides like the left likes their victim hierarchy, is that it's a good way to try to push the culture and try to push things legally and also in the courts to restrict Christians and restrict the church. That's why they want things like the Equality Act, or they're mad about 303 creative case. That, it's like, hey, you have freedom of association and religion and other stuff like that. And they're like, how dare you not allow people to be forced by the government to comply when I want a special cake made and the way that I want it. And How dare you not allow me to destroy someone's religious liberty and and violate their free will, and and then Kamala Harris and all these folks will get up and be so mad about it. I'm like, okay, but it protects you just like it protects me. That's the beauty of the Constitution. That's the beauty of the law. That's the beauty of justice, which is supposed to be blind. They don't want it to be. They don't want it to be. Anyway, let's finish this out.
Documents, and you're backing the guy. Like, you have children. How could you do that to your own? Don't you have?
She
a
doesn't
daughter?
have evidence that
Like,
Trump
what
raped
is
anyone,
wrong
by
with
the
you,
way.
dude? I've never seen such a party just completely just like the American idea, what we believe in as a country, is not what you're perpetuating. It's diversity. It's giving you tired, hungry, and poor. The
Okay,
Google phone
pause,
you have in your pocket
pause,
is because of all of
pause.
the diversity we've had.
Pause.
Pleasure to meet you.
And they're
Okay,
laughing. Like, I'd be embarrassed.
There's a lot of tension in the room now. Let's stay cordial. Let's stay respectful, please. Please, please.
Yeah, so that was that. That was that. It reminded me of something. I'm gonna show you guys what it reminded me of. I'm gonna show you what it reminded me of. I'll show.
They're new. Dr. Dorfman did an amazing job. It feels so real.
Hi. Yeah, I just I need a credit card, please, and some ID, please.
This is white chicks, by the way.
Credit card? ID? I'm so freaking pissed.
She was so freaking
Kim,
pissed, guys.
First of all, I go to Dr. Dorfman. He totally messes up my nose job. I ask him to make me look like Gwyneth Paltrow. I get off the surgery table looking like freaking Shrek. Then I get here, and Mr. Harper makes me feel like I'm some dumb blonde with fake boobs going to a ethnic party.
No, I didn't mean to offend you. It's just it's protocol.
I'm gonna have a BF. Oh my god, she's gonna have a bitch fit. Oh.
No. Don't have a BF now.
I want to speak to your supervisor. Better yet, I'm gonna write a letter. You are in big trouble. Dear Mr. Royal Hampton, I am a white woman in
Ladies,
America.
is there a problem here?
Yeah. Yes.
No.
So anyway, that's what made me think of the little fit that she had with all that stuff. So it just wasn't obviously constructive. It wasn't meant to be constructive, but again, it was really disrespectful to everyone else on the panel. And I would have been embarrassed if I was in the room, in the circle, because Ben was very polite. You know, I wonder, why he just chose not to interject like that. But I think people observing, because I was looking through the comments and people just thought that behavior was not acceptable at all, So it was probably more effective for his argument because, again, no one debunked his prompt to just allow her to implode like that. So and then it wasn't even constructive on the points that she was making, like point by point by point, because you can debate them one at a time, but when people just go on and on and on and on like that, you're not trying to have a conversation, and you're certainly not trying to have a debate, because people can't respond. Like, she just wanted to tell him off. But yeah, that didn't give me male energy, not in the least bit. It gave me, maybe you're on too much testosterone, but it didn't give me convincing male vibes, Anyway, let me talk about this John Legend stuff. John Legend went on Club Shay Shay, and I've only seen this clip, like right before it came on, and he decided to talk about abortion. There's some inside baseball, by the way, that I would like to tell you guys, but I can't about stuff. But I'll let you know if things break out. But anyway, John Legend went on Club Shay Shay, and he has had many viral moments. And I don't know how many people have watched this interview yet, but they're spreading a lot of misinformation. And John Legend, some time ago, him and his wife Chrissy Teigen had a miscarriage, and they show this video of technically, I guess it was be stillborn because of how late it was, and they even have a little clip down there because they did put it on social media, and took time to photograph their mourning for everyone to kind of see. And now they're saying that it was an abortion. It took Chrissy Teigen a year before she would start calling it an abortion, and she told like Hollywood Reporter that John told her that it was an abortion, and she was just calling it a miscarriage. And now it's like, oh well, I had an abortion, I didn't know that. And I don't know how much of it is just ignorance or propaganda or agenda or the desperation to be relevant. I feel like so many people are into the pro-choice position just because it feels popular and it feels right to be in what you think is the majority or whatever. But exploiting your children who have passed away naturally and using their death to try to make it so more women can deliberately end the lives of their children is disgusting. And I'm not as hot as I was when I first saw this video. But John Legend this isn't what good people do.
People that have an abortion after 15 weeks, almost always, they wanted to keep the baby. But
this isn't true. But I'll let him talk for 2 more seconds, and then I'm going to interrupt.
There's some kind of complication that came up that they have to have an abortion. So my wife.
Okay. This is not true. I know people want it to be true. Well, first of all, most abortions occur in like prior to 15 weeks. That's true. But all abortions outside of like, life of the mother are immoral anyway. Just whatever logic you can think, just ask yourself, would you apply that outside of the womb? And even in situations of life of the mother, I would say that's still not even ethically the same thing that we're kind of talking about, because you still want to try to preserve both lives. In some cases, you can't preserve the life of the fetus. Let's say you have an ectopic pregnancy. That's not an abortion. They don't use the same kind of methods to do that, but the baby didn't come in. They're like in the tube, and you can't preserve their life. There's nothing you can do with that. But even on Planned Parenthood's website, they used to say that admit ectopic pregnancy is not the same thing as abortion, but so many people want to conflate all these things. There's some circumstances like maybe you have to induce early or something like that, and you can't. The baby is going to be born too early, and they won't survive. That is an unfortunate situation, but if I would consider that more triage. The moral implication and the moral discussion that we are having about abortion is because we don't want the deliberate killing, the premeditated homicide of these human beings. So that's why I say if both can live, both should live. And I don't think that's controversial. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. But people will say, well, any reason. And I'm sure John Legend would argue, even if it was after 15 weeks, that women should still be able to do it if they don't feel financially up to it or whatever. I'm sure that he would still promote that, because Kamala Harris and most Democrats, I don't know if I want to say most Democrats. I don't know if most Democrats on the street would agree to that. Because the plurality, actually, the majority of people, and this is from a study. It was like college Harris Capps poll right after Roe v. Wade fell. The majority of people actually don't believe in abortion past 15 weeks. And I can't remember the breakdown of the numbers, but it was the majority after 15 weeks, and only like 10% of the country, which I think is gross and high, believed in like no exceptions, period. But Democrat leadership pushes no exceptions. And they might say this jargon that he's saying, that no one would do it late term unless they had like really tragic circumstances, but it's just not true. So first of all, I had a friend who had an abortion after 15 weeks. I think she's closer to 20 weeks, and she might have been 20 weeks, but I knew it was at least like 19, but it might have been further along than that. And her reason, and by the way, I did an interview with her some time ago. You can find it on my channel, my YouTube channel. Her name is Ronquel. She wrote about it in her book. She regrets that she did it. She knows she took a life. She's repented for it. But she had an abortion, and in her words, because she wanted a blank slate. She was in high school, about to go to college. She was in love with a guy who really didn't love her. She was too naive to really know that at the time. But she wanted a blank slate. She took a long time to decide. Sometimes that could be just why women wait so long, because they're trying to make a decision. They don't know. Sometimes women don't find out they're pregnant until late. But she didn't know what she wanted to do. She was scared to tell her mom. I don't think her mom really knew that she was sexually active. And when she told her mom was disappointed, but she said, I'm going to let this be your decision. And so she made a decision, and she acknowledged in her book, she wrote about it, and that she knew deep down, or at least reflecting back, she could have made it work. She really could have made it work to take care of the baby if she really wanted to, but she wanted a blank slate. Most women who have abortions not to preserve their own life, but their lifestyle. And people will get mad because when people say it's about convenience, and no, it's never convenient to have an abortion. It's not fun. It hurts, and it's traumatic. Something you have to carry with the rest of your life. But and you don't want to take care of a child. It's more convenient for you to not allow them to live. You don't think you can afford it. Instead of you struggling financially, it's more convenient for you to kill the child. That's what people mean by it. Not that it's easy or something you took lightly when we say that it's convenient, or out of convenience rather. So she ended up having the abortion, and it was a 2-day procedure, and it was traumatic for her. The anesthesia that they used didn't work. And so she could feel them preparing her cervix. Because they had to prepare her. It was a 2-day procedure, because at that point the baby's so big, you have to, prepare the body so you can then rip it out, So she passed out in pain. And the doctor should have been able to see she was distressed about it, but they wanted their check or whatever. So, and the next day, when she woke up, she described it seemed like a horror show. Her mom took her home. She was in pain and crying and other stuff. She went back the next day, paid more money for a bigger dosage of anesthesia shoes. So she was knocked out when they did the procedure, and ended the life of her child. That had nothing to do with anything medical. And the reality is that is the situation in most of these cases. And I know people don't want to think about that and believe it, but when you point out stuff like this, especially when you have these debates and point out the fact that, hey, women still have healthy women with healthy pregnancies and healthy babies will still have abortions after 21 weeks. And they'll still say, well, I think that's their right to do it. So many people will do that. Now, there's plenty of people who will say, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. But plenty of people, you still push them on it. They still think that it should be a woman's choice. So if I had to guess, I would think that John is in that camp of he would still think that healthy women after 15 weeks with healthy, viable babies, 15 wouldn't be viable, but if they weren't viable, even that he would still think that it's a woman's right to choose. I would think that that's probably the case. Perhaps it's presumptive of me, but this man is exploiting the death of his child, so I don't think too highly of him. Anyway, but he's just wrong on the facts. He's just wrong on the facts. Now, people will do medical tests for their children later than 15 weeks or so. You might not find out until you're in the 20th week or whatever, somewhere along there, maybe 24 or 25 weeks or something. And you might find out they have some kind of, abnormality. Maybe it's something that they think is going to hinder the quality of their life. Maybe they think the baby won't live very long. That's a sad situation, and sometimes that's the case. Maybe the child just has Down syndrome. Therefore, the family decides to abort. Is that ethical? Do you agree with that? Do you agree with eugenics, using abortion for eugenics? Put the Down syndrome baby out of its misery? Do you agree with that? Women do it. People who intend to have a child find out they get some news and they're not quite as healthy as they'd like. They're kind of deformed or whatever. Might have some kind of issue. And they decide to terminate. Is that ethical to you? Because that's a reality. But there have been different studies, not just anecdotal evidence. Secular pro-life has covered this a lot, but there's been anecdotal studies that show that women who have abortion late term have them for similar reasons that they have them early. But if you want to go to some more anecdotal of someone who ought to know because he does it for a living, Warren Hearn, there's a profile about him in The Atlantic. We talked about that at the time when it came out. But Warren Hearn, he's out of Colorado. He's just an abortion absolutist. He considers all abortion to be healthcare because the baby's inside of the mother. He's even done sex-selective abortions. Oh, you don't want a boy? Okay, we'll abort the boy. Oh, you don't want a girl? We'll abort the girl. He's admitted to doing that. Is that ethical? Is that ethical? Because Republicans tried to outlaw sex-selective abortion when Obama was president, and they didn't end up getting passed. And Jake Tapper, I don't think he had a show at the time, but he was with ABC News, I think, at the time, and they asked the Obama administration how they felt about it, and they agreed with it not being shut down because they still ultimately believed in a woman's right to choose. Is that ethical? I don't think so. Do you? But he said maybe half the stories at his clinic are like emotional stories where women will have abortions as a mercy killing or something like that. But the reality is that many women who have abortions late term, this is a fiction that is just for medical stuff. And by the way, Chrissy Teigen, his wife, did not have an abortion. So this is a really gross talking point. It's a really disgusting talking point. It's not true. It's literally just not true. And it wouldn't matter to most of these people using it anyway. If Kamala Harris or Tim Walz or somebody got on the debate stage talking about like, oh, women would only do it late term for some kind of medical, they don't. Okay, Democrats will do this thing where it's like, it's not happening, but if it is happening, it's good anyway. And that's what it's like with this. Like, it's not happening, but even if it is, it's good. Anyway, let's move on. Watch a little bit more. I don't know if I can stomach the whole video with you guys, but
she was well past 15 weeks when she had to have an abortion. Mm-hmm. She was miscarrying and bleeding out, and all these things were happening.
Her life was in danger.
Her life was in danger. And for the government to say, oh, we need to evaluate this to make sure you're sufficiently dying before you can have an abortion. That's what they're saying, right? In Texas and in Georgia and in all these states where they have.
That is specifically not what the Texas court said. And the Texas court has clarified further on the law, like particularly let's with the because people will bring up the gosh, what's her name? Her name escapes me all of a sudden. There was a mother who she wanted her child had trisomy maybe 18, and she had other pregnancies, and she had C-section. So she knew she had a pregnancy again, that she'd have to have a C-section. And essentially her lawyers argued that she knew that her baby was going to die, and babies can live and probably could live more if doctors just kind of, I don't know, throw up their hands and say it's incompatible with life. But essentially she wanted to save her miscarriage for a healthy child. Her doctors said that her life was in imminent danger. And even for health reasons, because you can still do it for like I don't think it's just life. I think it's also for like your to preserve your body or something. But her doctors did not argue using the medical necessity standards that were required by law. They argued a lesser standard. So in my opinion, it kind of looks like they maybe botched the argument to have all this press, because she just went somewhere else and got an abortion, and she could always just did that, but that's what she did. But they took this to the courts and stuff, and because the doctors, they didn't do it immediately, and the court said, no, if your patient needs an abortion, you don't have to go to the courts and all this stuff and ask for, just do it. But they wanted to ask first, get permission, because they didn't want to, you could say they were scared or whatever, but I don't even think they got, there's like the second opinion. They just, and the attorney general's like, what the heck are you guys doing? You're not even doing this right. So they didn't argue using the standard that was appropriate for the law. They argued a lesser standard, and they actually admitted that her life was not in imminent danger and stuff. So, and essentially they argued that she wanted an abortion. And they argued that her uterus and stuff was fragile after her C-sections and other stuff like that. But an abortion, especially that late, is no cakewalk. It's no picnic. You have to pull the baby out and scrape the and make sure you get everything out. So you're still talking about a brutal surgery at that point. Anyway, I can understand not wanting to go through a C-section, but regardless of that, the fact that your child is going to die, all of the children that you have is going to die someday. And that child that you want to kill, they're still your child. They're still your child. And you should love them even if they're going to die. Kate Cox, that's her name. Kate Cox. So the Supreme Court has had cases in Texas where they have come back up and explain the law. But even if you have situations that aren't as clear, or the hospitals aren't as clear, that's a situation that we need to work on to clarify, to make sure that there's not all this hysteria. But the Democrats are ginning up all this hysteria around everywhere and freaking out doctors because they want everything so murky, so they can slip in all these circumstances where if a woman just wants an abortion, it's going to be legal because there's just no exceptions. That's what they want. Because after the Kate Cox story broke, there were people saying, oh, they say they want exceptions, but they're not going to even follow the exceptions when there are exceptions. So we just need it to be legal. So they need to advocate for better pro-life laws that are clear in these instances with the mother, instead of trying to argue that women should just be able to have abortions. Because we're talking about triage situation, necessary medical care to preserve life versus deliberately ending a life.
Trump abortion bans. They're saying,
and then he's using this language of the Trump abortion ban. Trump appointed people to the Supreme Court, which, by the way, there were people on both sides of the judicial aisle. Ruth Bader Ginsburg did not think that Roe v. Wade was good law. And it wasn't. So eventually got struck down, and obviously wasn't good law because it kept morphing after like Doe and other Planned Parenthood v. Casey and stuff. It morphed, over time with different restrictions or whatever, not restrictions, but just different rulings or whatever that it got included and morphed in there. It just wasn't a good law. The basis for which they rooted it in, the 14th Amendment, right to privacy, like it just didn't make a lot of sense. And I'm not saying that Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't want abortion available, but she just thought the right needed to be rooted somewhere else, so it fell, but to call it a Trump abortion ban when Trump has really spoken out against what he sees as extreme policies, across these different states, he may generally feel that way. Maybe a lot of it is for political expediency. I think that's the case in most parts. And I Gosh, I hope that's the case. It's despicable either way. But it's not a Trump abortion ban. That's just what they keep saying. Trump isn't the reason why any medical malpractice might be going on or any ignorance might be going on, but pushing the ignorance upon people and creating mass hysteria. If you're doing that and fostering that environment rather than saying, okay, let's put our heads together and just make sure legislatively this doesn't happen, and I see pro-choice doctors who will come on it and spread propaganda online. I'm like, why isn't your priority trying to just make sure the confusion is gone and the laws are tight enough that there is no confusion? Why is your goal just to make sure more babies can be killed? Why is that?
The government needs to evaluate whether you are sufficiently dying before you can have an abortion.
That's not true.
Not your doctor, not you and your family.
Right.
The government.
That's not true.
No.
That's not true.
Stay out of it.
Right.
Let these women, let them and their families and their doctors make these decisions. We don't need the government to be involved in it. And if the government's involved, that means the police and the district attorney are involved.
Correct.
In medical decisions. That's crazy.
Right.
It's crazy.
I agree.
And overturning Roe versus Wade, Trump wants to claim credit for it, but at the same time be like, I just put it with the states. Oh no, you put it with the states of Texas.
Yeah, that's literally what happened. Yeah.
States of Georgia, of Alabama, you put it with these states. And by the way, that's where most Black women live, in the South.
Southern states.
In the South. So that means the majority of Black women are in regimes that would rather possibly let them die before giving them the life-saving.
This isn't true. But two, the flip side of what he's saying, oh, there's all these Black women in these. Okay, yeah, and it's more likely that they cannot kill their Black children. So you're crying because more Black men and Black women won't be murdered. You sound like a clown. You sound like a clown. Sound like a clown. Black babies are disproportionately killed. And you're upset because they can't continue being disproportionately killed. Does it make sense, John?
Treatment that they need. When we went through all these fertility struggles and then had a miscarriage, it made it even more clear to me how personal everything that happens in that room with your OBGYN, everything that happens in that room is private. And it's so intensely personal and intensely physical. A woman feels every aspect of this thing.
John, when you have to console your wife because you
I just see an irony here of them saying it's intensely personal. And it is intensely personal how you feel and everything when that happens and with your doctors and stuff. But at the same time, they're sharing pictures that they posted on Instagram. Like, who's in the room snapping these photos? Like, that was one thing that people were talking about when this happened. Like, it's very sad, but it's also like, who's snapping these pictures of you? Like, I can understand wanting the photos of like, hey, we want to remember our son who you are now exploiting, but you didn't do it privately, though. You invited the whole world into this conversation, and now you're using it and exploiting your dead child. So it's not private when you're using your dead child to kill other children to make sure they can be killed and not protected from the law, by the law, I guess. So it is private, but when you bring things to the whole entire world on Instagram or even share it, it's not so private. And again, you can say it's private, but Kamala Harris said that she doesn't want religious exemptions. They want the Hyde Amendment repealed. So they want taxpayer dollars to fund it. They want to fund these abortion mills like Planned Parenthood. And you can say, they do more than abortion. Yeah, you can meet with them for 30 minutes and they'll give you puberty blockers. So you can be a big pharma slave the rest of your life. Sure, they do more than abortions, but they mainly do abortions. I'm sure hormones will probably be a big thing for them too. But and you can say, well, they do other things. Yeah, you go for an abortion appointment and they attach other things, like they might give you some birth control or something, and that's any discrete interaction. They count as a service. So you may go in for an abortion and they may count like 3 other things. So the abortion, even though that's why you went in, it was just a quarter of the reason why you went in. So that's how they inflate their numbers. You can go look at their annual reports. They are abortion factories. That's their primary thing. That's their primary thing. There at one point, Democrats were saying that, you know, you can get a mammogram done there. I'm sorry, mammogram done there, and the Parenthood, Cecilia Richards, ended up going before Congress. She's like, no, we've never said that you can get a mammogram done at Planned Parenthood. But people were going around lying about it. Like, I got one that done there. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. There's other clinics for women's health that do way more for women than Planned Parenthood. They don't help you. They help you. Planned Parenthood, they don't help you plan for afterwards. They do very few adoption referrals. You can't go get diapers and other things for your kid if you go to Planned Parenthood. That's not what they're for. It's an abortion mill. That's what it is. They may give you some birth control and other stuff like that, but their primary thing is abortion.
You know how bad she wanted this child.
Yeah.
What are you saying? How do you, like Chris says, I'm sorry. There's not enough I'm sorry.
There's not enough. And the thing you got to realize is you're not going to solve the problem in that moment. And, you know, I'm a person that likes to solve the problem.
Yes.
Like, I'm very like, I want to solve it. I want to fix it. And sometimes you got to realize you can't fix it.
Right.
You're just going to have to live in it for a while, and you're going to get through it, but you can't fix it all of a sudden. There's no magical words you can say to fix it, but you need to be there. You need to be supportive.
Right.
And you need to work together.
You scumbag. You scumbag. You convinced your wife that she had an abortion. You convinced your wife that she had an abortion. Now, a miscarriage is a spontaneous ending of a pregnancy resulting in the death of an embryo. I mean, an abortion in general is a termination of a pregnancy resulting in the death of an embryo or fetus. A spontaneous abortion is technically a miscarriage. People usually just call them miscarriages, but the big word there is spontaneous, which means you didn't mean to do it. They are using their son who passed away to try to prop up a system that wants to be able to deliberately do induced abortions. There's a big moral difference here. But she had a stillbirth. She had a stillbirth. Okay? They posted this stuff on Instagram. And let me show you guys the post. I mean, they posted this stuff on Instagram talking about how much they wanted it, take the photos of their baby. We are shocked and in the kind of deep pain you can only hear about, the kind of pain we've never felt before. We've never been able to stop the bleeding. We were never able to stop the bleeding and give our baby the fluids he needed, despite bags and bags of blood, transfusions. It just wasn't enough. So they tried to save this baby. They tried to save this baby's life. They tried to save this baby. I don't even know if the baby came out dead or alive. Maybe the baby died shortly after birth. So did they purposely induce and the baby just didn't survive? I'm not sure about all those particular details. I haven't found like an in-depth explanation. They said we never decide on our baby's names until the last possible moment after they're born, just before we leave the hospital. But we, for some reason, had started to call this little guy in my belly Jack. So he will always be Jack to us. Jack worked so hard to be a part of our little family, and he will be forever. So these are the pictures that they shared. And they tried to save this baby. They tried to save this baby's life. We are talking about a triage situation where there's a medical emergency and the baby couldn't be saved. We're not talking about deliberately going in there to end the life of the child, because there are people who say, well, I got an abortion because it was a medical situation. And it might just be they didn't want their child with Down syndrome to live. That could have been the medical situation, the medical reason why they had an abortion. There's a woman from the UK, her baby was at 24 weeks, and the doctors tried to convince her to have an abortion because the baby's foot was like this. And they're like, well, you're single, like, how are you going to raise the baby? And she felt coerced by her doctors. And so she had her baby. They just chopped off the foot and gave him, his own special leg. Well, not whole leg, but, foot and stuff. And he's a happy, beautiful baby boy. Not a baby. He's a toddler now, a couple years old, I guess. And alive. And his mommy loves him so much. So the medical reasons why women might even choose to have an abortion, that doesn't mean that their life was actually in danger. So it sounds like she had a medical complication, sure. And they maybe they had to induce. It is a triage situation, and they tried to preserve both lives. That is very different than the stuff that Kamala Harris is trying to promote. Very different. Very, very different. And again, I don't know if it's just the desperation to be relevant or just because they feel so close to this issue that they just want to be, I guess, included. But the ethical implications of what happened to her versus what people are actually trying to do and get past, and the effect that he might have going on that podcast to talk about that experience and misrepresenting what the law says in Texas and these other places. It's just misinformation. Even on that podcast that Ben was on, not podcast, but the Jubilee, and somebody brought up, brought up Georgia. And so he brought up, she was probably referring to Amber Thurman. And so he started going through that case a little bit, but they've been lying about a woman who died from sepsis after she had an abortion. An abortion ban would have saved her life and the life of her twins. And they're still saying, Trump's fault, abortion ban. It's his fault. No, access to readily abortion, access to abortions, I'll just say that, is what ended her life. It's also medical malpractice. They should have acted sooner as well. But she wouldn't have needed the care afterwards if she hadn't have killed her twins. So John Legend is a scumbag. I don't know what else to tell you guys. This guy makes me sick. Guy makes me sick. Okay, so we are over the time for today. So I think we will, let me see if there's anything pressing that I want to show you guys with this Kamala Harris stuff she said some really dumb stuff last night. She said some really dumb stuff. By the way, I mentioned yesterday that Atlantic did a hit piece on Trump, claiming that he didn't want to pay for the funeral of some Mexican. And this female soldier who was murdered, her sister spoke out and said that Trump treated the family so well. The lawyer came out, said that the family was treated so well by him. And the writer, Jeffrey Goldberg, people are dissing the sister who spoke out, basically saying, you don't really have a right to feel the way that you feel, kind of, because this is an important story, so we get to exploit it, and it just seems kind of evil, because Trump had that one like tiff with one Gold Star person, dad, and people went on and on and on and on about that. And that was like a personal, he started a beef, Trump beef back. That wasn't wise. I'm not condoning that. But they're exploiting the death of someone who was murdered. And using the pain, that loss, to attack Trump. And now the family has to go through this. And now they're saying that the sister who's speaking out, it's, like, oh, you feel this way, but we gotta air this dirty laundry 2 weeks before the election. Things that Mark Meadows and other people who would have been maybe involved in that story deny. And then at the end, there's a segment. Let me just we can talk about this more tomorrow, I guess, but Jake Tapper had the author of the piece on a show, and they're like, well, Trump didn't pay for the funeral, so that really says a lot. But the day that he met with the family, he's like, I'll pay for it if you guys need anything. And then I think the lawyers or whatever were like, the military will pay for it. So Trump didn't need to pay for it. So now they're saying, well, Trump didn't pay for it, so this speaks volumes on how bad of a guy he is. He didn't need to pay for it. The military took care of it. So the fact that he didn't do it, because the family didn't need him to do it, doesn't somehow make the story true of the comments they claim that he made. So it's just wild. It's just really wild. But by the way, so many Republicans were so kind when my mom died, and Trump did send out a letter from, him offering condolences and stuff. I just don't, this story is so insane. It's so insane how they're treating the sister in order to go after Trump. And at the end of the day, I don't know how many ads they're prepared to run or whatever. I'm sure you'll see it on TV, mobile ads or whatever. But people want to be able to pay for groceries for their kids and stuff. And people can say that Trump is Hitler and so mean and whatever. But at the end of the day, who's going to close the border and who's going to maybe reduce prices and make things more affordable? Because people don't trust that it's Kamala Harris. People don't trust her. We'll have to talk more about it tomorrow, guys. We are over on our time, so I'm gonna have to let you go. But I retweeted some of these things on my. If you're following me on Twitter, you guys can see some of the stuff that I retweeted. But anyway, God bless you guys, and make sure that you guys go to the website, check out different content on there. If you want to support, you guys can support there at the website. Check out some of my books that I've written. I mentioned one of them when I was talking. The Color of the God's Eyes is behind me here on screen, but the sequel is The Song on the Devil's Lips. That's the one that has the draft rights in it. It's a really good book, really different. So think X-Men meets a Civil War. So I encourage you guys to check that out. And also my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. That's available on Amazon, and it covers rights and science. I know this one says Barnes and Noble, but it's just Amazon right now because I came out with the second edition. I didn't put the second edition on Barnes and Noble yet, but rights, science, a little bit of philosophy. I'm not a deep philosophy person, but it touches on all those kinds of different things. So go ahead and check it out. And you can make a secular argument, and I can make a secular argument, but I believe people of faith should be able to defend their faith and the foundations of which they stand on. And I don't think they should back down. When people say, oh, you must believe that humans are inherently valuable. Is that because you're religious? I'm like, thank you for the compliment. Like, I think it's wrong to unjustly unalive people. If you think that's only a position that a Christian can have, I don't think that's true. But I appreciate again the compliment. I think that's a really big flex on Jesus. So, anyway, God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.